I know I've said this before, and it's extremely likely that I'll say it again, but grinders truly are the key to unlocking any coffee's true flavor potential. And it seems, at least lately, that design has taken a bit of a backseat to functionality. But today, we're looking at the Femobook A68, which boasts a completely different look than the metal tubes we've grown so accustomed to. And on top of its unique outward design, it's also carrying a decent sized set of 68mm stainless conical burrs, and an even more rare, fully tool-free magnetized breakdown. So in today's video, we're of course going to take a deeper look at the A68's unique features, its overall performance from grind to cup, and of course the ever-present quirks and downsides. But first, in the spirit of full disclosure, the folks over at Femobook sent me the A68 for review, and of course agreed to my terms of no access to my draft or the contents of this video prior to full public release. So with all that out of the way, we're going to dive right into it after a quick word from this video's sponsor, Third Wave Water. When it comes to brewing the best coffee, quality ingredients matter. And purely by the numbers, water makes up to 98% of what's in your cup, and is absolutely vital to the long-term reliability of your equipment. So after months of testing and trials, I've landed on Third Wave Water formulas for all of my coffee preparation. Not only is it formulated to not produce scale or cause corrosion, but there's an option for every palate. Third Wave Water offers a wide variety of mineral blends, specifically designed to get the most out of your favorite roast level or brew type. So take control of one of the most important variables for brewing quality coffee, and head over to thirdwavewater.com/Sprometheus or use code Sprometheus at checkout to snag 10% off your first purchase. Thanks to Third Wave Water for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into it. Even though the A68 looks relatively simple on its surface, there's actually a handful of unique features and solid specifications hidden underneath. So let's start this whole thing off with a quick overview. And first things first, the body and all the accessories are made of aluminum, and that includes the detachable bean hopper, dosing chute, and dosing cup, all of which make the entire grinder itself a deceivingly heavy 12 pounds, especially for its very narrow and compact footprint. But the weight itself does make it feel like it sits relatively sturdy on your counter, with minimal likelihood of it tipping over during regular use, like turning on the power or making grind adjustments, which is done using this step dial that is over 300 clicks, all of which are a very tight 8 micron. On the inside, the grinder is powered by a 192 watt DC motor that spins the 68mm stainless steel conical burrs at a relatively slow 60 RPM. And the grinds themselves follow a pretty straight through pathway into the dosing cup. And finally, when you're ready to clean, the A68's coolest feature, at least in my humble opinion, is how you can break it down almost completely without any tools because of its unique magnetic design. Okay, so now that we're all sort of on the same page and all understand that there's more to this kind of simple black box than meets the eye, let's get into what it's like to use and how it performs. And first things first, the workflow is standard single doser, meaning beans go in the top and grinds come out the bottom. But of course, there are some intricacies that happen in the middle, so let's discuss those, shall we? For one, the big selling point on this grinder, I think, is its significant amount of fine-tuning control, considering its stepped adjustment. For example, with Espresso, I found myself grinding between 65 and 80 clicks from 0. And for pour-over, I'm at nearly 100 clicks coarser, between the 170 to 180 mark. And because of the aforementioned 8 micron or 0.008 millimeter per click, you likely won't be missing out on a truly dialed-in coffee. But because there is such a wide grind size spectrum connected to such a small diameter knob, it's very easy to get lost. So it does make switching between espresso and filter coffees a bit more of a slow and focused experience. You'll want to either memorize or take notes on clicks in either direction. From there, speaking of slow, the grinder does run at 60 RPM, which even by Conical standards is pretty low, with something like the Niche Zero, which in my mind is still one of the Conical benchmarks, running at about 300 RPM faster. But in my testing, I didn't have any stalls or stutters, so the speed doesn't appear to hurt its ability to grind through lighter roasts. And even though the speeds themselves are rather slow, the grind times themselves aren't incredibly long due to its 68mm burr set. So you're looking at roughly 1 gram per second on espresso settings, and roughly 1.5 grams per second on medium coarse filter settings. On the way out though, there is quite a bit of static both inside and outside of the dosing cup, as well as on the inside of the dosing chute itself. They did happen to design and include a smart little brush that cleans the burr exit as it spins, but it does little to stop grinds sticking to the inside of the dosing chute itself. So RDT in my mind is an absolute requirement to keep things clean and reduce retention. And of course, when you use RDT, the retention itself is minimal. In fact, it hits essentially the industry standard of 0.1 grams on average. In terms of grind size distribution, the A68 is actually pretty consistent and has a nice clean curve with an even lower standard variation than the Niche Zero, which uses a 63mm conical set from Modular, which tends to tick up a bit, at least by a few percent on the coarser side of the spectrum. But in terms of in the cup, interestingly enough, there is a noticeable difference, and these results sort of fell in line with what I theorized before I even ran these tests. And that was that the A68 produces a significantly brighter, more acidic and clarity-focused brew than the Niche, which leans more heavily on complexity, balance, and texture. So this tighter grind size distribution is actually showing itself in the cup, and this effect may or may not be for everyone. Of course, the A68 is plenty capable of any brew method you'd like, but for me, in terms of espresso, I like to have a much stronger line between my flat burr shots and conicals, and this one is just a little bit blurry. But ultimately, the flavors this grinder can produce are of good quality, and there's really not much to say bad on that front, more so preferential. So in my mind, if you're looking for a conical burr grinder to maybe complement your flat burr grinder, this may not be the one I'd go with. But if you're looking for a one-and-done grinder that can provide more clarity than your average conical, then it's definitely worth your consideration. But speaking of considerations, this is a perfect segue into the next section. As you'd likely expected, and as always without fail, there are some quirks and downsides worth discussing when it comes to the A68. To start, the grinder itself is not incredibly loud, and on my tests it lands between 75 and 80 decibels, which seems to be, in my experience, about average, but it does have some higher pitched squealing, which I know some folks, and myself included, aren't super fond of, so it's worth bringing to your attention. Another thing that I know tends to bother some folks is a power brick, and the A68's is significant. Granted, the cables are long enough to place it on the floor or move it behind something, but if you have a small counter or limited space, this does somewhat negatively affect its overall small footprint benefits. And finally, the one thing that I find to be probably the most striking is the price point. Granted, the burrs are bigger than most modern conicals on the market, and the materials and build feels nice, but $800 seems like a bit of an imbalance when you consider its features and other similar options out on the market. In the end, I think the Femobook A68 occupies a pretty unique space. Its overall design and modular magnetized breakdown definitely sets it apart from the pack. And its conicals do produce grinds capable of hitting not only specialty standard extraction yields, but also have much more clarity than the standard conicals I'm familiar with. And this outcome is likely due to its slower grind speeds that produce less fines. So in general, it's a pretty capable grinder with what I would consider very minimal quirks or issues, but it's the price point itself, especially compared to other options out there, that sort of put it into a bit of a no man's land. I mean, there are a few that produce similar cups like the Niche Zero or Lagome Mini, both of which hit that $500 to $600 price point, that may be more attractive to users for a variety of reasons, including the A68 just being from a lesser known brand than its competition. That said, I don't think buyers would be disappointed with what the A68 can provide both inside and outside of the cup. Personally, I've enjoyed my time with it and made plenty of tasty coffees without any real issue, beyond the small annoyances that come with most if not all grinders. But on that note, I think it's time I start wrapping this one up, and as always, pass the conversation on to you. So what are your thoughts on the Femobook A68? What features do you like? What features do you not? And if you're a Femobook owner, A68 or one of their other models, I'd love to hear your thoughts on their long-term reliability, because after 3 months, I can't really say much on that. So drop your answers to those questions and any others you may have in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Check out my Instagram @Sprometheus for content throughout the week. Help support the channel by considering becoming a member for early content access. And as always, stay caffeinated. Pony boy.